Everyone struggles, whether they care to admit it or not. Sarah Kelly uses her past struggle to share with us how to break the silence.
11th grade, you would have known a girl who feared every piece of food that she put in her mouth, counted every calorie that she consumed, and dreaded the day when her parents would look down at the scale below her and see that it read barely even 89 pounds. Back then, I struggled with an eating disorder known as anorexia nervosa. For 3.5 years, I struggled with that eating disorder. Now, I know what you may be thinking. In fact, if I were you, I'd be thinking the same thing. How did I go from the bondage of an eating disorder to the freedom of a perfectly healthy body weight? How did I go from literally hating the girl in the mirror to loving her? And my answer for you today is God. And as cliche as that might sound, it's the truth. And the way that God did that, one of his greatest tools, I believe, was by breaking the silence. What I mean by that is choosing to learn how to verbalize what I was struggling with, share it with others instead of simply internalizing it. Trying to deal with the problem myself and hope that one day it would go away because I was too afraid to break the silence. Now, everybody struggles whether we like to admit it or not. It doesn't have to be an eating disorder. It could be the fact that your parents are going through a divorce and you don't know how to deal with it. Or the fact that you're in your 3rd year of your major and you don't even know if it's the major you're still supposed to be in. It could be roommate issues or an alcohol addiction, a drug addiction, a pornography addiction. It could be depression or suicidal thoughts. Or maybe, like me, it is an eating disorder. But whatever it is, whether big or small, the common theme is that oftentimes we'd rather not talk about it at all. We'd rather just keep it inside of ourselves and not break the silence. Now, why do we do this? Why do we choose to internalize instead of verbalize? It's because of 2 fears. And the first is the fear of rejection. Back when I was in 4th grade, my parents convinced me to get a perm. Okay, so a perm is like what your great-great-great-grandma gets, not what a 4th grader should get. But as a 4th grader, I'm super naive, super innocent, and my parents told me that my hair would literally look like Miley Cyrus and Hannah Montana, like the beautiful, luscious brown locks that every 4th grader wants. And so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And needless to say, after I get the perm, it looks nothing like her hair, and instead it looks like Hermione from Harry Potter 1, like the first movie, super puffy and frizzy, awful. And so in that time in my life, I already have braces, cankles, pasty white skin, and now I have a squirrel on my head. It's literally awful. And so for a month after I got the hairdo, I literally wore a hood every single day to school because I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed of my hair, of what I found so unattractive, that I was afraid my friends would reject me if they saw this unattractive part of me. So I chose to cover it up. And this is what we do with our struggles, too. We choose to hide our struggles by keeping them bottled up inside instead of breaking the silence because we're afraid of the rejection that will be shown to us by others. And so we fear rejection and we fear reality. I remember when I was in 3rd grade, back before the whole hair catastrophe. I was riding my bike around my cul-de-sac in my neighborhood, and my brother was out there and all his cool older friends, and I literally had no girlfriends at that time, so I had to be super cool in order to hang out with them. So I'm riding my bike, and I accidentally run into a curb, and I fall off my bike and skin my knee. It's instantly bleeding super bad. But I'm telling myself inside, it's fine, I'm fine, because I knew that if I told myself I was fine, I could make myself believe that I was, even though I actually wasn't. As soon as I went inside, my mom rounded the corner, and like any good mom, she's like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? Your knee is literally bleeding. What happened?" And I look up at her, and the moment when I said the truth of the matter, "I'm not fine, I skinned my knee, it really hurts," the tears came rushing down my face. Because in that moment, I chose to step out of the denial that I was fine and into the reality that I really wasn't. I was struggling. And so we fear reality because it's in that moment that we realize we're not okay. And it's in that moment that all of the emotions that come with the struggle come full force. And so we fear rejection and we fear reality. What I'm hoping that by the end of this speech you'll realize is that it's worth it to face those fears. Because by facing those fears, you can go after the solution to your struggle. And you do that by choosing to break the silence because of the 3 ways, the ABCs to breaking the silence. A, advice, the shortcut to your solution. I remember when I was about 1.5 years into struggling with my eating disorder, and my dad brought me into the living room and he sat me down on the couch and he looked into my eyes and he said, "Sarah, I really think you need to go see a counselor. I really think that you need this and that it's going to help you, and I've been researching it." And immediately inside, I was like, there's literally no way I'm going to go talk to a random stranger about my struggle. It's not happening. So I looked up at him and I said that. "No, Dad, I'm good. Thank you for the offer, but I'm not going to see a counselor." And he looked me in the eyes again and said, "You know what, Sarah, it's not a question. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. Because this counselor knows something that you don't." You see, this counselor, he knows how to leave anorexia, and you simply know how to live with anorexia. And what my dad meant in that moment was that, sure, I knew what it was like to struggle with anorexia, but I had never overcome it, so how could I be expected to know how to? But this counselor, he had counseled other people before. He had gone through it himself. He knew how to get out, and he could give me the advice to do that. And so oftentimes when we're struggling, we can't be expected to know how to get out of the struggle because we've never gone through it before. So think of it this way. You're given a destination that you have to get to, but you're not given any form of directions on how to get there. No map, no GPS, nothing. Just a destination that you've never gone to before. Wouldn't it be easier if somebody gave you the directions on how to get there? Because if you're simply given the destination, you're going to take wrong turns and wrong roads until hopefully, maybe, one day you get there. But if someone that's already gone there before could just give you the directions, that could be your advice, your shortcut to your solution, which only comes by choosing to break the silence. So A, advice, and B, breakthrough. Denial doesn't dispose of the struggle. Picture this. You're in a room. There's a plasma screen in front of you. There's a coffee table, a sofa behind the coffee table, maybe a lampstand on the wall, and a counter over here. You can see all of this because the lights are on. But as soon as you choose to turn the lights off, all of a sudden, you're in darkness. All of a sudden, you can't see any of the furniture anymore. But just because you chose darkness doesn't dispose of the furniture. Just because you choose denial doesn't dispose of the struggle. It's still there. So breakthrough comes when we stop choosing to live in the denial that you're okay when you're really not, and instead choose to step out of that denial and into the reality that you're not okay. Because the breakthrough comes, and that is the only moment when you're in reality that you can truly go after a solution. Because in denial, you don't even believe that there's a struggle that needs a solution. But when you've come to the reality that you are struggling, you can then go after that solution. And by choosing to break the silence, you've chosen to actualize the struggle. And so A, advice, and B, breakthrough, and C, community. I remember the first person that I ever told that I was struggling with anorexia to. It wasn't my doctor, it wasn't my counselor, it wasn't my family. All those people knew anyways. But this was the first person that I chose to tell. she would have had no idea if I hadn't told her. It was my friend Emily. We used to go to Panera Bread every Friday night together. We were doing a Bible study. And so every week we'd do the Bible study, and then we'd meet up on Friday night, and we'd kind of discuss what we had gotten out of it, what we related to, what stuck out to us. And so that particular week, when we had already gone through most of the book, I realized that it was on addictions. And as I read through the topic that week on my own, came to a place where the author started to talk about eating disorders. And I knew in that moment that when I met up with my friend Emily on Friday night, I had a choice. I could either live the lie out that I was fine and wasn't struggling, or I could test her friendship and tell her the truth. Because if she chose to stick by me when I told her that I was struggling, she'd be proven to be a true friend, because she'd be sticking by me even when she saw the unattractive side of me. And so it came to that Friday night, and we were sat down, and we had gotten to the end of the Bible study. And she looked up at me and said, "Is there anything that you relate to? Is there anything that stood out to you?" And I looked up at her and said, "You know what? I've never told anybody this before. But I've struggled for a while now with an eating disorder, and I don't know how to get out of it. And that's really hard for me to talk about." And I just remember so clearly that she looked me in the eyes and said, "Sarah, I'm so happy that you would be willing to share that with me. And I just want to let you know that I'm going to stand by you through it all. I'm going to be there to encourage you and motivate you, and I'm going to be there to hold you accountable. But I'm not leaving you." And in that moment, I realized that I had a friend who was willing to stand by my side even when it didn't look good. And from there, from that time testing the friendship, I was able to start telling multiple other people. I was able to tell people in my church and more people in my family and build a community around me of people to help me bear my burden. Because I needed that community, because you can't bear your burdens alone. And as more and more people started to come around me, it felt like more and more weight was being lifted off my shoulders, because there were that many more people willing to encourage me and motivate me and hold me accountable. There were that many more people bearing my burden with me. And so the reason why you need a community around you is because the more people you can have to help you bear the burden, the better. Picture this. You're in a concert, and there's a huge crowd around you. You're elbow to elbow with people. And all of a sudden, somebody decides to crowd surf. So you have your hands up. You're ready to catch them as they come across. And as soon as they come to glide across your hands, it feels as though you're not holding any weight at all. Why is that? It's because there's so many other people around you helping you carry that weight of the person's body that it makes it feel like there's almost no weight above you at all. Now picture yourself standing alone trying to hold a full-grown man above your head. It's impossible. You can't do it. That's why you need a community. Because it's going to be impossible to bear your burdens alone. You can't bear your burdens alone. You need a community around you to encourage you, to motivate you, and to hold you accountable when you can't do it for yourself. And so A, advice, and B, breakthrough, and C, community. And what I'm hoping you'll take away from this speech today is not just the story of how I went from struggle to solution, but how you too can go from struggle to solution by simply choosing to break the silence. Thank you.